Now today in the shop, our primary job was to get the new chain guard. It's been modified on yesterday's video with some carbon fiber work and a full paint job. It's been dried up. We got to buff it out today. I wanted to get out to the garage and install it. But what happened today is the weather just got colder and colder and colder as the day went on. They were predicting snow. Turned into a very unpredictable day. But in the end, we got the job done. And managed to get a couple of pictures of the bike to share before actually the weather really went south. And by the end of the day, it really went south. So I'm really excited this morning. I have the chain guard drying. I came out early this morning, put it downstairs by a heating vent, went and had my coffee, checked to make sure the egret hasn't eaten all the fish, did all my farm work, and I'm ready to get down and buff that chain guard out. The best part of any painting job is that day that you get to buff it out and reinstall it on a bike. And if it isn't raining or snowing, it's supposed to be crappy this afternoon, of course I'll do some more photos. And those photos have been critical from letting me figure out how I want to do the next next part of the job. They've been really great in combination with John Pothier being able to Photoshop a lot of these things. It really gives me a lot of choices. And I'm going to need those choices very soon when the next part of the job after the chain guard, and I want to do the side covers and the windshield, that spare windshield I have. So there's always something to do when you have motorcycles. You're always busy. And hey, cool news this morning. Luciano called real early to tell me he bought another bike. Now I'm not going to let the cat in the bag, but he's over here picking up his tank. I'll let him explain. There's a great story to the bike. Even I was impressed. Turbo Steve has some stuff for me to work on. I know he bought a bike in parts, a parts bike, a parts turbo. Well, we're going to see what that is in the next couple days. And the weather looks like it might be that we'll have some painting days coming soon. But every day is different. You never know where this adventure is going. And I love the silver wheels. I love the gold wheels. And I think once I'm done buffing this chain guard out, it's going to be one more piece of the puzzle. We've built this bike like a puzzle, one detail at a time. And I often thought somewhere down the road I'm going to take the picture of the bike the day I bought it, and then one by one try to find pictures of the day I replaced the fender. That was a big thing, that white fender. All these flat black parts, those logos, the windshield that sat too upright, I had to make brackets. Painting the tail section was major. But the biggest single thing is the wheels. And I could not be happier the way the wheels worked out. Now it's time to put his tank down the cellar. We'll get that cooking up for a couple days. I don't know when he's going to be here, but this is going to be a nice project when he gets that upgrade to the bike, because the tank that was on there was a little cobby. Time to get serious and get this show on the road. Ooh, they look good. Ooh, they look good.
My timer says they're done, but
I'll get it. You want me to get it?
Do they look done?
Here at the bed and breakfast, there's only one way to make muffins. The old-fashioned way. Let your wife make them.
Let your daughter make them.
Hey. Truth in advertising, Stacy made these here. We didn't make them, but we're going to help her eat them. And we have really had a lot of fun since we opened the bed and breakfast, and we are at full capacity. So after organizing our priority list, having a cup of coffee, hey, that's drying up by the heating vent. This will be in the house now until Luciano picks it up. And the way we've worked this out is to have that overnight in the garage and then at least 2 or 3 hours up by a heating vent. And that has really worked great. A little warm soapy water, a couple of drops of Dawn, any kind of dish detergent's fine. Now what I found works really well is, and again I put this on many videos, the Rhino Wet 2000 and the 8065 polish. It makes buffing a part out as easy as I've ever had it. So the first thing is just to see if the paint is hard enough, and usually you can tell right away by the drag of the sandpaper if the sandpaper is dragging. Or if you're making up little chewing gum, the little balls of chewing gum, well, then what you have to do is just let it dry a little longer. That's a pretty simple explanation, a 101 of painting. Now, we've been trying to force dry the paint, and I've been experimenting with that, and with some relatively good results. But Not everybody has to do that. If you work in an environment where it's 70 or more degrees, you don't have to do any of that heating vent thing, which is handy. I'm betting any money Jay Leno doesn't have a heating vent issue. Anyway, I'm going to do one little spot of this, try to show it in real time, and then we'll do the whole part. And actually, it's probably going to take us an hour or so to do this, an hour and a half, and it's warmer here by far than it is in the garage, so a lot more fun being in here, and it'll warm up out in the garage when we go to put this on, I hope. Famous last words. Anyway, let's see how that paint is, if it's going flat yet. Yeah, it's fine. Hard to believe, but there it is. Let me show it without a camera cut. And again, I don't know if you can see how quickly that flattened out, but we need to get the whole part flat. Now, a couple of things about sanding with the 2000 grit. It's relatively easy to do. There's not a lot of effort involved in it, but it is time consuming, and you've got to be detail oriented. You've got to make sure you get all the little nooks and crannies and whatnot in there. But and you think when you're doing this, you think, oh boy, this is going to be a lot of work, and yeah, and you only had 2 cups of coffee this morning, so it's going to go slow. But what happens as soon as the day ends and the part is on the bike, you forget all about that. And you think, oh, that was easy, no problem at all. And once you can do this, you can buff out anything. And I remember many times doing this for a model airplane where everything had a little nook and a cranny and an edge. You didn't want to break through any edges or any of the high spots. You had to be so delicate, never realizing that a lot of motorcycle parts, and this just happens to be one of them, they may as well be model airplane parts. Now, you probably could hit this with a buffer somehow, but easier to do it by hand. Now, I have been able to, over many years that I've been doing this, been able to share this on an individual basis with some people who have lived at my house and spent time to Jot, Glenn, just to name a few, and picked up the skill very quickly, and I think everybody is capable of doing this. There's really not a lot of this that's really rocket science. You don't need a college degree, you don't need to be a mule, or you just need patience, and you've guys got to be willing to pay the price. And as boring as a day like today can be, at the end of the day, there's that Sikorsky moment. I always say, a Sikorsky moment where you look back and you say, who cares about this day? The result is worth putting in all the work. It's a Sikorsky moment. It's sanded out pretty well, and the next thing is we're going to get some compound on that and see how it buffs up. Not the easiest compound I know to use when you're going to buff a part by hand. This is my choice. There's several others. The one Dale donated, and of course McGuire's, but this one always seems to work the best for me, either by machine or by hand. Now, as I always do, I want to do one little part in real time so you can see if the paint's coming up reasonably. I guess there's parts of this you could do by machine if you were in a rush, but it looks like it's going to be raining out and crappy out the whole day, so may not even get the photos I want today, but if not, I'll get them tomorrow. But I always like to show, it's a critical thing, I think. When you're looking at a video and you want to try to learn something, I like to see it in real time. I really don't like to see, a lot of edit cuts, and it looks like it took 10 minutes, but it didn't. So, and especially when you're buffing by hand, because modern paint is beautiful. It absolutely buffs up super, super nice. This compound seems to work just as well as anything I've ever used. In fact, it is my favorite. But there's always that thing of, if you're looking at advertisements on TV and somebody's selling something, they may want to make it look a little better than it really is. Lucky for me, I'm not selling anything, so you can just see how it is, and if that works for you, great, and if it doesn't, that's okay too. Now, relatively simple. You do one part at a time. Real time, no camera cuts, no tomfoolery. Clean microfiber is always good if you can get one. And let's see if I can
I'm not sure. See, I gotta see how it's gonna play. Yeah, there it is in real time. We'll get the rest of this done. I'll be ready to go put it on the bike outside. I'm itching.
Now, there's really something about buffing any paint, and even if you had paint that was a used motorcycle that was several years old or really old, all of the paint every once in a while could use a little buffing and polishing. Now, I did that with the GS, really, and with the RD, of course. And what happens if you don't do it for a while? When you go to polish it, you go, wow, there's some great paint underneath here. Well, when it's a new part like this, that great paint was under there all along. You just got to get off the residue or the overspray, or in this case, we were painting in a hurricane yesterday, and there was a lot of dust in the paint. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to worry if you have dust or even up to a point, little defects in the paint. If you do the 2000 grit and you buff the paint out, that case closed. Right there, that's a Sikorsky moment where you look back at your hard work.
Now, I have no idea what's happening to the weather out there, but it's getting colder by the minute. I don't know. And they said it was a chance of snow or rain, but so far nothing. Well, that buffed out just about as good as I could expect. So I guess I ought to get another cup of coffee and get out there and get this installed. Now, it's some special bolts go in here, which I saved when I took this apart, and little metal bushings. And then inside, where you can't even see it, is one of those press pins. So it's a 3-point installation. And by the way, it's really tricky getting it in through the back without scratching it. I'm going to have to be really careful. Maybe what I'll do is I'll bring some blue tape out there just in case it looks like I may get it scratched. Don't want to scratch this. It took a long time to buff this out, but that paint and that compound, that system that I use, works pretty well. Now the trick is to get this installed without scratching it.
So the first thing, I wanted to shoot a couple of pictures of without the chain guard, and that's basically how I rode the bike for a year already, a little over a year. And then at the end of the day, when I go down to my computer, I can compare these side by side with the photos. Hopefully I'll get them today. I'll get a nice set that'll match up well. And I can look at, do I like it better, the same, or worse? Is it better with that or not as good?
That's pretty funny. When I bought the bike, it had all of this, and there's a big giant piece that's a casting in there. That all of this, when you do that license plate change, comes off. That's unbelievable how much stuff is on there and how much it must cost Yamaha to make that. Holy mackerel. And if I remember right, it was about 9 pounds, and it took me all day to get that Graves tail tidy on. And it's a separate video on our channel, of course. And I think it's the best one out there, because I've looked at the other ones, and sometimes they leave out a few steps. And by the way, when you do install the Graves part, there is some cutting involved. And they don't cover that on a video, but there is a part you have to cut.
Now, what made this a little more difficult than it had to be is if this was a flat black part, you just push it right on through the swing arm. But I was looking for anything that might be a sharp edge, anything might be a problem, because I had already put that down in there just to see if there was going to be an interference fit. So I decided to put some blue tape, rub the tape up on your pant leg or your jacket a few times so it's not overly sticky. And as I'm snaking it through, it scratched the tape.
And it's this piece here I've got to really be careful getting out. I don't want to scratch anything as this moves around. So getting this out, I think I'm going to need a screwdriver in there. That's really a tight fit in there. I remember putting that back. And the other screws are a little awkward to get to, but nothing undoable. And if I didn't have this out here right now, I'd really be in big trouble. This is the equivalent of what Dale has a pellet stove, heats his whole garage. This heats about the 3 inches in front of it. Now we'll get that out and get the bolts in.
Now this is true of any part that you do a custom paint job on. When the paint is soft and new, especially, and this is 1-day-old paint, it scratches very easily. It buffed out nicely. I got that part out that I don't know what that press pin. I was so careful. I was going back and forth because this if it's a flat black part, you just jam it on in there and put the screws in. I was being super careful. Plus the other thing, it's right near the wheel too. I don't want to put a scratch in the wheel. So whenever I'm working on something that's custom painted, or in my case any of the bikes, I don't want to scratch anything. And I'm really, really fussy about stuff like this. So what happens is a job that should take 15 minutes, you put in 2 screws and a press pin. I was going back and forth and making sure I have no interference and no clearance issues. It took time.
The kind of jobs, if you got little tiny fingers, this is a real piece of cake. Without those little fingers, forget it. And one thing that's handy is that little Harbor Freight flashlight, because that bolt in there, you've got to have little baby fingers. It's funny, these guys, I guess the Japanese people have little fingers. I'll bet when the engineers were figuring this out, they were having a good laugh. Oh boy, these guys, these backyard mechanics are going to be figuring out, how do I get my hand in there? They just don't know who they're dealing with. It is really difficult to get that in there though. But, and I'm trying not to scratch anything, of course. Boy, is it nice when you don't have, there you go. When you have small fingers. All right, beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now I better go get a hairdryer, make sure, because it's cold out here, make sure that tape hasn't gotten a good grip on my new paint.
Now always keep in mind, tape and cold, the cold tape, you leave something out in the garage where it's below freezing with tape on it and go to pull it off, that's a problem. Now I really made this more difficult than I had to, because what I should have done, while it's a good trick, before you put up and tighten up all the bolts, take the tape off. You can get your finger in there easier and get it out. Just makes it a little bit easier. But now I have pictures, and at the end of the video I'll put them on before and after, and I can evaluate it. Well, it's not snowing yet, so I'm going to try to get outside and get a couple of pictures of this from a few different angles and see. And I'll be very happy if it doesn't rain or snow on me. But boy, did it get cold in here. Good thing I have my my approved pellet stove here. That pellet stove puts out a lot more heat than that. But that thing really gets you through a day like today, when this really was a unpredictable day. It got cold so quick, unbelievable. Now I kind of did this little photo shoot in a hurry, because as I was getting ready to do it, just a couple of snowflakes were falling, just 1 or 2, and I said, oh man, I don't want to get the bike all wet after all this. I'll get it, anything that's negative. This is my Sunday driver here, my baby. Anyway, I did get to look at it, and this is what I wanted to look at right here. And I wanted to look at it. Now there's not a lot of sun today. In fact, there's no sun. So a lot of this is shaded. It looks a little dismal. I would like it to have been a nice, bright, sunny day. One of the things on a bright, sunny day, this blue really comes to life. It's like it has a candy apple, pearly effect to it. All the Yamaha racing blue is like that. And that on a cloudy day like this, it still looks good, but now, one of the reasons I wanted to look at this, not only for the chain guard, and not only for some of the things we've done, like painting the front fender parts, and I wanted to start planning out this windshield modification, because I have a spare windshield, and I have a picture in my mind of what I want it to look like. I don't know if it's going to work out. A lot of times it doesn't. But even if it doesn't, I'll at least post that up so you can see how that adventure went, and if that wouldn't work for you, people that have an MT09. I'm sure people that have an MT09, like in the beginning, I wanted to get that little piece of body work. I call it a windscreen, a windshield, a fly screen. I looked at, in fact, John Pothier, and thank you, John, he sent me a link to where you could check every single one that was ever made on a planet. I didn't like any of them. Then what happened was, after I think about a year, I said, I'm going to have to bite the bullet here, and maybe I'll figure some way of modifying it that I like it. Well, I laid it back more, made those carbon brackets. I liked it a lot better. But I still am not, I know I can make it even better than that. With small changes, I want to paint some silver trim on it to match the tank. Haven't decided exactly what that is. I want to do some cutting on it, make it a little bit nicer, neater fit, make it look like what I have in my mind. And what I have in my mind I think is going to work out good. But I'm going to need to make some carbon fiber material because the 2 pieces I have left over are going to be for the side covers. So I want to mimic that logo somehow, that little chopped up piece in the front. I don't know yet. That's the joy of doing this, but I did want to see that chain guard. And I think the chain guard added that just a little bit of blue that I wanted to have. And again, I love the look of this bike from the back. You can see the whole tire. So it's like a flat track bike or something. A motard, I don't know. I don't even know what this bike covers a lot of bases. I don't know what it is, but I know when you jump on a saddle and go through the gears with that quick shifter, it's to die for. And of all the bikes in my collection, this is the one that's always, you go out to the garage and it waves to you, hey, take me for a ride, it's a sunny day. I love the way the wheels came out. Absolutely every part of this bike, and that I've thought it out one step at a time, haven't just jumped on a bandwagon, turned it into a Christmas tree and started hanging anodized parts from China off it. I've really thought this through every step of the way. And a good example is the chain guard that we did today. Now looking at it before and after. When the parts were flat black and the wheels were blue, this whole bike looked totally different. Now it has a look that absolutely is much better to me. Well, despite the cold, despite the unpredictability of the day, got the job done. It's buffed out. It's installed. That is one tricky thing, and you got to have some little tiny hands to get those screws in. But we got it done. And that's at the end of every day. The only thing that really matters to me is we got it done. Now time to get inside and have some coffee. See how the family's doing. And even with the bed and breakfast in full operation and at full capacity, we're still managing to get stuff done every day. Amazing. Miles came over and conveniently, just in time not to help me. There's the answer to working in cold weather, right, Miles? Where's your coffee? No coffee today? So if you could only know, if you're living in a warm weather climate, what this cup of coffee tastes like, you can't imagine on a day like today. The day started out not so bad, but boy. And then by lunchtime they predicted some snow. We didn't get the snow. I got my pictures. I can look at my pictures tonight on a computer. I want to start working on a windshield. I want to start working on side covers. Turbo Steve's got a tank he wants me to paint. Luciano's got to pick up his stuff. Life is good here on a Ponderosa. Now, as I look back at the shop after the day is over here, and we managed to get a lot of stuff done, Luciano's tank came out great. And at the end of every day, I go to my computer and look up some pictures just to remind me, and I guess I need more reminding than a lot of people, how lucky I am. And I count myself as one of the luckiest people that I know. Because I've been able to have a really fun time, a good time with the motorcycles that I have, and I've been blessed with having relatively good health and a good family. But one of the things I really have always thought I had was I have a lot of ambition or energy to try to do things that I want to do. And I know a lot of people dream dreams but don't get to live them because they don't have the energy to do them or the money or whatever. And I think I'm lucky because I have the energy and I have enough time, and I have, because my family is always in the back of my mind here, I managed to balance motorcycles and family together. And I'm looking back here at the first year and a half, 10,000 miles I've had this bike, the changes I made, the time when I first got it, that ugly front fender, and when it didn't even have a windshield, and when it had other things, the blue wheels. Now every one of those parts is in the background. And for somebody who doesn't, I've told this story on video before, what a Sikorsky moment is. I've had a Sikorsky moment today. And what it is Igor Sikorsky, that is credited with inventing the helicopter, had failures for all his life, crashing and developing, and things didn't work out, and he had a really rough time developing this for his whole lifetime. But right at the end of his life, just before he passed away, he got on a modern helicopter with air conditioning and went out over the land and looked out over the sea and the land. And he looked out and he said to his son, "That's what I dreamed about my whole life long. My whole life I dreamed about this day. And I call this day a Sikorsky moment." Now, for me, when I bought this bike, I wasn't crazy about the looks, but I knew the performance was going to float my boat. And today, as I've made it my own bike little by little, today was a day I had my Sikorsky moment, and it was great. And when I get out on the road this spring, I will have had plenty of these Sikorsky moments. And every time I go through those gears, I'll be thinking about my bride buying me this bike and how it changed my life. It was so much fun adding this bike to my collection. I have a bike from every 10-year period that I've been involved in motorcycling. And this bike, I never anticipated buying this bike. It's a strange story I've told many times how I got it. And I never knew at the time I got it, and I was so caught up in getting it and just getting Luciano to help me go down to South Jersey to get it. And I really have to admit, the whole bike, as I look back, has been one big Sikorsky moment. And thanks so much for watching.